Review number 2 for Lister in geometry. I'm going to look at numbers 6, 7, and 10 in this video. Number 6 asks us to find the area of this parallelogram. Some of these are missing. VWXY. Remember that parallelogram is the same as a rectangle where all you're doing is multiplying base and height together. The common mistake is that people will want to use the 7. They always want to use the numbers that are on the sides. But with the parallelogram, remember, you're always looking for the right angle. The 4 is on this height with the right angle, which means 4 is your height, not the 7. People always want to use the 7 here. It's going to be the 4. So base times height, the height is 4. The base is this. Usually we look at the bottom, there's nothing there, but remember that top and bottom opposite sides of the parallelogram are equal. So that base is going to be 5. So your area is just 5 times 4, whoa, and 20. And number 7, and we start getting into the reasoning with quadrilaterals. If George says that all rhombuses are squares, Paul will immediately argue that all squares are rhombuses. Who is incorrect and why are they incorrect? Now on some of the notes, depending on what teacher you had, you saw a diagram. And I'm going to go ahead and put this diagram down here. It started with just a random quadrilateral. There was nothing special about the quadrilateral. And then the quadrilateral gave way to the parallelogram because you all of a sudden had parallel sides, top and bottom, left and right. And as you went down through the diagram, it got more and more specific. The parallelogram led to the rectangle, which had everything the parallelogram had, but also had right angles. And then it went to the rhombus, which again had all the stuff with the parallelogram, but now you had 4 congruent sides. And at the end, they all led to the perfect shape, which is your square, 4 right angles, 4 congruent sides. Now if you use this diagram, if you look at the parallelogram has everything that quadrilaterals have. And the only thing is that the quadrilateral has is just 4 sides, very basic. Both of these shapes have everything the parallelogram has. So technically, these are all parallelograms. The square is always a parallelogram. It's always what led to it. The square is a rectangle, the square is a rhombus, the square is a parallelogram, because it has everything that all these shapes have. Now back in the problem, it said, George says that all rhombuses are squares. Well, remember, the rhombus led to the square. The rhombus isn't a square yet. Paul says that all squares are rhombuses. The squares are rhombuses because that's where they came from. So if we go back to the problem, George again says that all rhombuses are squares, but remember the rhombus came before the square. George is incorrect. Now it says to explain why they're incorrect. So remember, he said that all rhombuses are squares. Rhombuses have four congruent sides, but notice, what does the square have that the rhombus doesn't? It has these right angles in the corners. So because the rhombus doesn't automatically have those right angles, that's what means it won't always be squares. So here we can say George is incorrect. Rhombuses don't always have right angles. Therefore, George is the one that's wrong. Last one in this video, number 10. Find the value of x and the parallelogram below, then find all the missing angles. One note is that the giant diagram is not drawn to scale. If we look at what's labeled, you have 3x plus 9 in this angle right here. 141 degrees in this one. And notice that 141 is obtuse, but this is an acute angle, so it's the diagram's off a little bit, but we can still solve. When you're looking at these two angles, you have to decide if they're opposite or consecutive. Consecutive, remember, went in a row, and consecutive were the ones that added up to 180. But since they're across one another, they're opposite, which means they're equal to each other. So your equation would start as 3x plus 9 equals 141. We're not using the 180. Subtract your 9, you get 132. Divide by 3, and that should come out to 40, nope, wait, 44. And there is your value for x.